that HR has got two hats. These two hats sometimes create a lot of confusions for the people that need to be saved, as well as in HR themselves. Sometimes it becomes a challenge to really understand which hat they are now wearing in an institution. And those hats is the hat of the HR being an employee and the hat of being an employer. So these two hats are extremely important to understand, and and they do affect the manner in which the HR professional might behave and even execute their work. And so we will be going into the details of all these things so that we try to appreciate the role of HR in any institution. Now, let's start with the role of HR. Understanding the role of HR, starting by understanding the HR as an employee. Now, for our colleagues in the universities, those of you who are studying human resource, it's important to understand that what you're studying are basically they're giving you fundamentals or theories. These are important. They help you to come and survive in the actual world. However, it's also important to emphasize that when we start talking about HR as an employee, what we mean is that in the same manner like any other employee will be employed, HR also they go through interviews or whatever it is, the form of recruitment that is being used by a particular institution. Now, once the HR is employed, they're also signing all the forms and they will have a contract. So HR as an employee also goes through the same process as any other employee, and this is very important to understand, even for fellow employees to understand that HR in the first place is also an employee. They are also, entitled to the same conditions. They go through the same process of in getting salary increments, unless there are other things happening in your institution. They will also go through the same appraisals to determine whether they are working or not, and things of that nature. They will also be subjected to the same disciplinary process if they committed an offense, and they could also be fired just like any other person. They can be fired. So it's important, especially for the employees working with HR people, to understand that HR person who is working with you is as an employee as yourselves, and so you should try to see them from that perspective in the first place, that they are employees. And that means that sometimes those, the wars that are built between HR and employees should really not be there, because this HR person should be able to work with the other employees, because at the end of the day, he or she, that HR person, is also just as an employee. And talking to the HR professionals themselves, this point that we are talking about of you being an employee is extremely important, because sometimes, with the newfound not freedom, but the new powers that sometimes HR get to be given. You're in charge of recruitment. You're running with the recruitment process. You may be doing the payroll, the performance management, and so many other things. You find that HR, sometimes these things, they start to go to your head. You start losing it. You start feeling like you are, a king in some kingdom, and everybody should be bowing. It shouldn't be the case. It really shouldn't be the case. What we are emphasizing, that as HR, you should know that you are just like any other employee. And that means your job there is to serve and to do your job as HR, because that is what you are paid for. And it's important that there is this clear understanding, because sometimes we will talk about the role of HR as an employer. We'll be talking about that. Now we're talking about the role of HR as HR themselves being employees. This is fundamental, because once you understand that you are an employee just like another employee, this helps you in terms of even the approach you have towards work. It means you work just like another employee, nothing special. When you need to deliver, you deliver just like another employee. When you need to conform to certain rules and policies of the institution, you do it. Just because you are the one who might be sitting with all the other policies, and it doesn't mean you should do things above what your policies require you to do. And so it's important that when it comes to the HR being an employee, it is understood that HR will be expected to do their job, just like any other employee will be assigned duties that they have to deliver on. At the same time, it's also important to understand that HR, being an employee, will also be subjected to the same grievance procedures you may have in the institution. That means that HR also, when they have grievances, and normally you have your grievance procedure, but of course there will be certain provisions that allow you to go to a certain stage, from stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and things of that nature, depending on your institution. HR should also follow procedures, and if they have a grievance, let them do so. Because at the end of the day, they're also employees. You shouldn't be, as we say, dying inside. Don't die inside because you just think, no, because I'm an HR, so there's no way I can go. Everybody expects me to be okay. No. When you have challenges as HR, you have a grievance, follow the grievance procedure. Talk to somebody in line with your policies or your procedures. Because at the end of the day, HR, being an employee, means that they will be also experiencing the very things that other employees experience. And it's important that this is well understood by fellow employees who are going to be working with this HR, but also it's important to be this concept to be understood even by the HR people themselves, because that helps you to calm down and to be more focused rather than being all over the place. But this also helps the employers to understand that at the end of the day, this HR person is also an employee. And therefore, uh, sometimes when you're discussing things, you should bear in mind that as you say certain things, as you're making certain plans, there are times when, HR is involved because of the nature of the job. HR is also part of, for instance, you're doing redundancies, you're making certain decisions. You may literally forget that this HR person is also an employee at the end of the day, and you're just going through things. No, we have to do this, and the HR guy, where they are sitting, they'll be there thinking, so this is what the company is planning. Okay. And you may find that that HR person starts to behave in a way that maybe you didn't expect, because they are also thinking, I'm also an employee. And that's why we always emphasize to employers that as you deal with employees, but in this particular case, as you deal with the HR people, you have to understand that there is also this component that they are also employees. And if they are employees, you want to be able to manage their expectations and manage their, what they think about the workplace and things of that nature. This is on one side when we talk about HR being an employee. On the other side, HR is also an employer. Why do we say so? HR, most of the times we expect that HR will be in management. We also expect that HR, depending on the institution, because of course in some institutions, HR is put in very low positions, like you're not part of management. But ideally, HR should be sitting in management because of the role and the nature of HR itself. Now, when HR is seen as the employer, what this means, and you could read up on this, the definitions of an employer. Now, when HR is considered as an employer, by nature of the job, there's an expectation that they will be involved in the recruitment process, first of all in the strategy implementation itself, the recruitment processes. The HR will be speaking on behalf of the employer when it comes to salaries and conditions of service. HR has to ensure as an employer that employees are performing in line with your performance management that you have in place. That means carrying out performance appraisals with the heads of departments. The HR has to ensure that they are investing in training, because they are playing the role of the employer. The HR is also involved in the disciplinary processes, basically giving guidance, because their primary interest in this particular case it is to protect the interest of the employers. So the role of the HR therefore now becomes that of the employer. Now, the HR will play his role or her role all the way up to even the separation with the employee. And that's why Because of this nature, normally even when employees are signing contracts, for instance, it is advisable that HR does not become a witness to the employee's contract. Rather, the HR will be a witness for the employer, because when cases come up and then you have to go to the courts, HR ideally will be standing on the part of the employer as a representative of the employer, or as a witness of the employer. So on this particular case, therefore, it's important to understand that HR is carrying these two hats, and as I mentioned before, this sometimes creates a problem for HR, and it also creates problem for other employees because of what they expect. And that's why sometimes you find that and this is something we always advise HR practitioners, that you need to understand your role very well, so that you can choose and be someone who is in the middle, serving the interests of the employees, serving the interests of the employer. Now, anytime you see that the HR starts to serve only the interests of the employees, what starts to happen is that HR, before long, they start to be labeled as someone who just for instance, there are some employers who call such HR as unionists, because the HR will then be standing simply on the side of employees and demanding things from the employer, without even understanding the ability to pay of the employer. And this is where HR will be standing purely on the side of employees, without understanding or paying any much attention to the business. On the other side, the HR can put on this hat of the employer and forget about the employees. And you know what happens? The employees will start calling this HR as a sellout. And this is where you find that in some institution, people start to chant slogans that the HR should go, HR should go, and they start to sing this kind of songs. You know that things are not very good for you as HR. And that's why we always emphasize that as HR, you want to be in a place where you fully understand your role. You fully understand that yours is to serve the employees, yours is to serve the employers. Once you understand that you need to be in this place, and that's why it's not also necessary even to be having fights. You're fighting every employee here, you're fighting the employer for what? Your job is to see, how do I bring the employees, the employers together, so that we work together as an institution to achieve the set targets. It's important that HR becomes this key position, or the person who helps the institution to move forward. Basically, you're looking at how best do we start to get the best out of the employees that we have. How do we ensure that management is doing its very best in managing the employees very well? How do we ensure that the employees are being taken care of, and the employees are also performing very well and in line with the rules and expectations of the institution that you're working for? And so it's really a balancing act. Now we are talking about this, it will look like it's a very simple thing. It is not a simple thing, and we will try to tackle these things in our other posts around how do you actually now balance between these employers' needs and employees' needs, and just really to get the very best out of the employees and then in the employment relationship. There is a lot of balancing that has to happen, both at a personal level. As an HR person, there'll be an expectation of you investing a lot in developing yourself. And this, when we talk about developing yourself, don't even wait for the institution to start sending you to school. The investment we are talking about is investment in learning and acquiring skills that start to help you. If your institution can support you, that will be the best thing. But if the institution can't, you have a lot of resources. There is internet, there are colleagues, and you can be in a network that helps you to start developing these skills and knowledge around these things. And that's why we always say an HR person should invest in constantly developing themselves. Otherwise, before long, you find yourself being caught up in just being that employee who's always complaining, disgruntled. Hey, this management, yeah, now they have given us this new management. It's not necessary. Or you be on the part of the employer, and all you are doing is, talking about policies, talking about this, and talking about, no, this can't be done, when you need to be saving the employees. Sometimes employees want something, and even if the company doesn't have that which you're talking about, what is key is, can you help the employees to understand what the company can give and what it can't give in a way that they walk away smiling? It is not easy, but it's always important that you do this in a manner that the employees get to feel a certain sense that they belong to this institution, a certain sense that they are valued. Even when a company is having challenges, you can literally talk to these employees that are coming to you, or you going to them and explain things. And again, this is not easy, but as we've said, we're going to do a lot of other videos around how do you manage employees in the best possible way for you to really continue getting the best out of them. How do you create synergies between the different departments in your institution? How do you work well with supervisors, your CEOs, including all the way in terms of how you work with the boards, for those of you who are working with institutions that are big and have got boards in place. So we will be tackling a lot of topics on this channel, and please ensure that you subscribe and hit the subscription button, and share the news also with your network. And we appreciate for all the feedback on all the questions you give us, including the support that you've been giving us and the comments that you do send to us. Otherwise, we are greatly appreciative of everything that you do. Keep following us and keep sharing the news. This is Owen Katongo Kabanda, your management and leadership advisor.